Hi, this is Nicole with the website portion of this series. I want to talk in depth about websites, not just for the people that have them, but maybe for the people watching this who are considering making one for their business. So I'm just going to go over the different types of websites that there are. Also decisions that you'll make in setting up a website and how to make those a little bit more easily. E-commerce, which I'm just using as a general word to say the idea of selling your products and services online. And the idea of selling more. So if you have an existing business website, how you can use it to sell more things. Looking at your website data, which can help you make decisions about how you can be doing things better or maybe the kinds of things your customers want. And SEO, which is basically an acronym that stands for Search Engine Optimization, which is the idea of making your website friendly to search engines so that people can find it, because most people find websites by opening up something like Google and typing in some words. Now, we know that e-commerce, which is the idea of people buying things online, is growing, and it's growing at a pretty good rate. But at the same time, about half of American small businesses do not have a website. So just even having a website can represent a huge opportunity for your business to be more visible to the general public and ideally be able to sell them something. Now, I want to talk a little bit about making your website mobile friendly. So the idea is that your website, as we talked about in the previous section, is going to be visited by a majority of people who are on mobile devices. So what you have to do is think about when you're setting up a website to make sure that it looks okay and works okay on a smartphone. So there's a couple of different approaches, and I'm mainly mentioning these to you so that when you're talking to a web developer or when you're looking around online, you understand that these exist. So one is a mobile site. And basically what that means is you set up a separate mobile-friendly version of your website. An example of this I can give you is if you look up Sea Princess Cruises. So I think it's seaprincesscruises.com, but I'm not entirely sure what the URL is. If you look at that on your computer, it's in Northeast Harbor. So if you look up Sea Princess Northeast Harbor, look it up on a computer and look it up on a mobile device. And what you're going to see is that the websites look different. And the reason is that the mobile website is set up with a different software and is in a different almost location in terms of where the files are than the regular version of the website, which is, the desktop version. The pros of this is that setting up a mobile friendly site separately is pretty easy. The service that the Sea Princess people use is called Dada Mobile, and it's, something like 10 or 20 bucks a month. So if you have an existing website and you don't feel like going through a redesign at this point, but you need like a little stopgap to make your site mobile friendly, you can use a service like that to create a mobile friendly website. The cons, of course, of this is that if you make a change, like let's say you have to change your phone number, you have to change it 2 places. And over time, it's going to get annoying to maintain 2 different websites. The other thing that people talk to me a lot about is an app. And the idea of the difference between, of course, a website and an app is something that you download, whether it's from the iTunes store or whether it's from, if you use an Android device, the Google Play store. It's something that you download and you have available on your phone. Now, this is convenient. Like, for example, if you use Google Maps a lot, it's convenient for you to have Google Maps installed on your phone doing things. Now, unless you really have an idea of what you want this app to do, most people do not want to download something to be able to visit a small business website. But let's pretend you're like, you know what? I sell over 10,000 kinds of clothing and I want people to be able to virtually try them on. By putting in their measurements, it'll create a body type for them and they can try on the clothes. Okay, I get how that could be interesting. But I will say most apps are pretty expensive relatively to develop. And unless you have a very specific vision for what you want this app to do, I would say most people listening to this or watching this, you don't need an app. So I'm just going to save you 10 grand or more by just saying that. And if you have an idea of what you want to do, just look around in the marketplace and see if anyone's doing it. And that can give you an idea. Now, if nobody's doing it, it could be that you've had this amazing original idea, or it could be that it's really hard to program. So just keep that in mind. And the final thing, which is what most people do when they go through the redesign or design phase at this point, is create what's called a responsive website. And a responsive website basically adjusts to any screen size and resolution automatically. So as a web designer, what you do is you create kind of like, okay, when it's this wide, I want the slideshow to go away. And, or when it's this wide, I want this thing to move up. And while it's a lot more work to do that, it's just kind of like, building it the right way. Now, if you're going to use a service, a website builder like a Wix or a Squarespace, or you're going to use WordPress, you can look for responsive templates. And what that'll do is it'll allow you to at least start from a place that's mobile friendly, or at least should act responsively to be able to build your site. So if you're in the process of thinking about rebuilding your site, you're going to be probably building a responsive website. And just an example of this, my site is responsive, and actually pretty much every site I've built in the last 5 years has been responsive. We saw this coming down the pike as a firm, and we thought, well, we can either coast and keep doing what we're doing for another couple of years before we have to learn things, or we can start learning now. So now the technology has gotten a lot better to create these sites. So it's a whole new way to think about your website. Because you think about that different people are going to see slightly different versions of it, and that being okay with you. Now, in terms of things that go into making a website, I like to think of this as 3 components. Now, if you're a web host and watching this, you're probably going to cringe a little bit. My friends who do this say that this is not entirely technically sound, but I think it works for an analogy. So you need 3 things for a website. First of all, you need a domain name. Second of all, you need web hosting, which is space to put your website on. And then you need your website software, the website itself. So your domain name is basically you buy the rights to use a particular address. So NicoleWillette.com or ilikeflowers.org. It's something. And you buy the rights to use this address. And depending on where you buy it, it can cost different amounts of money. Honestly, most domains cost around $10 to $12 a year. 2 services I like a lot are enom, enom.com, and Namecheap, namecheap.com. So those are 2 places that you can buy domains, and they are relatively inexpensive. They will need to be renewed. You can buy them for 1 year. You can buy them for 2 years. Personally, I like to do once a year because I can put it in my Google Calendar. I can say, okay, this domain is due, and I can just renew it every year. And it gives me a chance to check in with the client or with myself and make sure that I still want that domain. But you can also buy domains for longer periods of time. Now, I will say if your domain expires, you have a 30-day grace period to renew it. So if you accidentally go on vacation and forget to renew your domain, you have time. They legally have to be able to, reinstate your domain to you if you're the owner if you renew it within 30 days of its expiry. But if you're using, of course, your website is not going to load. Your email's not going to work if you have email associated with your domain. But just know that you have a 30-day grace period. So no matter what they say. The second thing you need is web hosting. Now, this is a little bit weirder for people, but basically, if you think about it, your website is a collection of files and sometimes a database. And those files and that database needs to live somewhere. Typically, it's living on, with a bunch of other websites on a server somewhere. And you can actually make a web server in your house, but think about it. If your cat knocks it over, or if your air conditioning in your basement stops working and it overheats, suddenly your website's down. That's why a lot of people just use a commercial provider of web hosting, because it's less responsibility for them. It's relatively inexpensive, and they can keep the servers at a constant temperature. They can have backups of it. And so you're looking at, for a small business website, your cost should be around $100 a year. If you're paying a lot more than that, please contact me, and I can help you not pay as much for that. Now, clearly, if you're the kind of person that has a lot of stuff, it's kind of like, you can live in a 1-bedroom apartment or you can live in a 3-story house. And if you have more stuff, you're going to need more space to put that stuff. So if you have, 150 hours of high-def video, that's going to take up a lot more room than a couple of basic web pages. So just keep in mind that your hosting price may vary slightly depending on the space you need and the additional services you need. Oftentimes, you can buy your domain name and your web hosting from the same provider. So if you want, you can just find one provider that does both. Most of them do both. And then you have one bill to pay. But just be really clear where you bought your domain and where you bought your web hosting, because there's all these scams out there that'll try to resell you the same thing that you've already bought. And if you're not sure of who your provider is, they can resell you something you already have. This happened to one of my friends. She bought a domain name and then she got a bill for her renewal and she just paid it and she didn't think much about it. She thought it was a little bit high, but then she looked more closely and realized that it wasn't the company she bought the domain from. And so she had to cancel her credit card and all this stuff. Just to say, be sure you keep track of where you bought your domain and where you have your hosting. And if you're not sure, you can actually look this up pretty easily online. So the final thing, of course, and the thing that probably costs the most money, takes the most time, is actually setting up the website, picking the software you're going to use. And basically, you can equate it to the house that you're going to put on the plot of land that you just purchased. So, your website can be something that can be free because you're doing it yourself, or it can cost thousands of dollars if you're paying, a high end, it depends what you want. Like I said, it's the difference between maybe a one-bedroom apartment and a 3-story house. Now, you've probably seen that there are such things as free web hosts. Here's the thing though, most of the time when you get a free account on WordPress.com, Blogspot.com, Wix.com, I think allows free website building, is it's going to be yourthing.wordpress.com or yourthing.wix.com. They're going to put their name in the URL as free advertising for their service. You're going to have to pay money to be able to use your own domain typically. So I guess in short, there's no such thing as free. I will say that if you're deciding whether to use a free website or a non-free website, just pay for your website because it makes you look like a more serious business owner. And if we look at the costs in terms of keeping your website online, which is buying your domain name and paying for your web hosting every year, you're looking at $125 to $150-ish bucks to keep your website online every year. And that's not bad in terms of a marketing piece if you divide that over the course of 12 months. So it makes you look like a lot more of a legit business owner if you have some kind of website that's not just some free template that uses, Blogspot or WordPress or whatever. Now, in terms of picking your domain name, you're going to say this over the phone a lot. People are going to call you and you're going to have to give your email address. Oh, you want more information? Go to info@anchorspace.com. Go to info@breakingeven.com. And so you'll have to spell it, right? So go with something short and kind of memorable. And you can put keywords in the domain if you want. So a lot of people say well, it would be really great if I was, Fort Kent, nursingservices.com. But if that's not your business name, don't worry about having that as a URL. You can, if you want, you're going to have one domain where your website lives, and then you can buy other domains and have it point there. So let's just say that you have a giant Christmas sale every year. Well, you don't want your URL to be the Christmas, so you might buy outdoorequipmentchristmassale.com, and you might have that redirect to the part of your website that is about the Christmas sale. So you can use that short URL, you can use that URL in marketing materials, and you can just have it redirect to the part of your website that makes the most sense. As we saw earlier, domain names cost between $10 and $12 a year. So especially if you want something short, easy to remember about a particular thing, you can just buy the domain and you can use it, to point to somewhere on your existing website. And, as I mentioned before, one company can do both a domain name and web hosting together if you're interested in that, or you can go with 2 separate companies. There's pros and cons to both, but just keep track of who you use. And if you're not sure, go to whois.net, whois.net, and you can type in your domain name and it'll tell you your domain registrar, which is where you purchased your domain, and it'll tell you your web hosting, your web server, which is your web host. So if you forget, you can just go there and look it up. Now, in terms of website software, you have basically kind of two major camps that most stuff falls in. There's hundreds of different website design software out there. But I'm just going to call one type of company is sort of a plug and play. So a Squarespace, a Wix, a Shopify. And basically what you're going to do there is you're going to pay some monthly fee, and they're going to give you a builder tool that you can use to build your website and to make it look like how you want, have the information you want. The pros of this is that it's really easy to set up. So like you can probably set up a website in a couple of hours if you have all your information together. What you'll notice putting together a website, by the way, is what takes the most time is getting all the images together, getting them cropped nice, getting all the text written, getting the dimensions of the products that you have for sale. So it's not so much the technology is part of it, but it's getting all the information together that is time consuming. Now, excuse me, Squarespace, Wix, Shopify, all these plug and play websites basically are your web hosts, and they're your software kind of combined. So that you're going to pay something like, $10, $20, $30, $40 a month and kind of have it all bundled together. The three things that I was talking about, these three things bundled together for $40 a month. Now, if we look at this and say, okay, well, if we have an existing website with software we're not paying monthly for, our costs to keep it online are only $150 a year. But if you're paying, $40 a month, that's a lot more than a couple $100 a year. So your monthly costs are relatively high with these services. And at a certain point, you're not going to be able to customize them the way that you want. And I only say this as like somebody who basically used a plug and play website the first 3 years I was in business. But then as I got more into running my business, I had a lot better idea of what I wanted. And I was like, I want to be able to have a payment form that connects to my email list, or I want to be able to have this thing, pull in and automatically send to this service. And I find I couldn't do it with the service that I was using. The other option that you can go with is these database-driven websites. So what that means is that these are open source software. WordPress.org, Drupal.org, Joomla.org. You basically go to those websites and you download the whole package. And what you can do is, and then you put it on your own server and you can do whatever you want with it because it's open source. And the great thing about that is because there's millions of people working in this software, is that if there's ever an issue or something somebody wants to do, usually somebody's figured out how to do it. So you don't have to wait for a company. So if you use Squarespace and Squarespace doesn't do the thing you want it to do, you have to wait for Squarespace to develop that thing. Whereas with using open source, you can just find someone who's already figured it out. I will say, honestly, though, the cons are it's kind of the pain in the butt to set up. What I would recommend you do, honestly, is most web hosts will actually do a WordPress, Drupal, or Joomla install for you. If you're looking for the easiest one to use, I would say WordPress is it. So if you buy web hosting, you can just say, hey, can you please install WordPress for me? And they'll do it. That's usually part of their services. And then what you can do is you can watch a bunch of videos about how to develop a WordPress website. But I will say it'll take you a lot longer to set up because there's a little bit more to it than the plug and play websites. But if you know what you want and you want to do some complex things, that might be a better fit for you. Don't let this decision take a long time or keep you from getting online. You can always start. You can always just say, you know what, I'm going to use Squarespace for 6 months. I'm just going to get something up there in time for the holidays and get some feedback. And then maybe I might revisit and do it in another software. Just know that all that work you did, all those putting together of photos, all that writing of content, you can use that somewhere else too. So it's not going to be for nothing, even if you move software. So don't let this, just find one that works best for you. In terms of a plug and play, I like Squarespace best, and I've used most of them. Shopify is great if you're selling products though. And I've heard my friends who do a lot of cart development say they really like Shopify a lot. And in terms of database driven, I really like WordPress. I find Drupal is the hardest to use, but these are just my opinions. You can take them for what they're worth. But just pick a website software and start building your site, But mainly people are coming to your website, not because of the software you're running or because of the domain name you chose, but they're coming because they're trying to get information that is useful to them. So your website has to have a purpose, and you got to think about your audience as part of that purpose and what you want people to do when they get to your site as part of getting all of the stuff together. And we call this in the business, by the way, a call to action. So like, what do you want me to do once I get to the website? And so that could be buy a product, fill out this particular form for a custom quote, sign up for our newsletter, follow us on Facebook, whatever, download our, new sales flyer, whatever it is. So what I thought, I'd do here is show a couple of websites and see how they've made their calls to action pretty clear. This is much better, by the way, in the recording that I did with the group because, we hear more conversation. Sorry, the audio didn't work out there. But as we go to like LL Bean's site, we see that their main thing, right, seems to be their LL Bean credit card, which is in the middle of the site. It's just this giant save 15%, learn more. I would say that's the most visible thing. And the second most visible thing might be the shopping bag because you see that in the upper right corner. Now, what's really interesting is visually on the internet, a person's eye first goes to the upper right corner of a website. And it's interesting because, right, we read left to right, but I don't know, the upper right is where if you're going to put something important, you're going to put it there. And a lot of people put their search boxes, their little search features in the upper right corner, and LL Bean kind of has it centered, but or they'll put their most important button, like their contact or their shop button or something like that. So in this case, the shopping bag is front and center there. Now this one I used because when I went to visit my mom, we watched a lot of the Hallmark Channel, and I thought, I wonder what their site looks like. And so what they've done here is, as you see, the kind of more visual thing is this Folgers ad in the middle of their page. I'm guessing that they make their money off ad revenue, so they need an ad that's sort of front and center on the website. And we also see that they're using a slideshow to get people to look at different things. So in this case, watch a preview of the show and whatever. And if we look in that upper right-hand corner, like I said, that place where everybody first looks, we see the little search box, but we also see the link to the Hallmark Channel. So I think what they wanted to do here was be able to get people back and forth between their different websites. So as you see, like on the top left in that gray area, they've got several different websites that are all kind of part of this big company, and they want people to be able to navigate between them. So I think that's why they made that little blue button that goes to the Hallmark Channel. There's a lot of text on this page. I'm not saying I like the way this is set up. I'm just showing you this is how some bigger companies do it. But there's certain design conventions, there's certain things that we do on websites because people expect them. And if you want to try to, it's kind of like saying how we usually zip up our pants from the front. We could theoretically zip them up for the back, but that's just how pants are made. Like, we could fight it, or we can just say, you know what, this is what we're working with. So usually, like I said, the search box is in the upper right corner if there is one, because that's the first place people go. And if someone's looking for something, a search box is a good thing to show them. Usually the navigational menu, which is how people get to the main pages on the site, is either on the top of the page or it's on the left. If you put it on the right, people are not going to think it's a navigational menu. They're going to think it's a list of links. People use both text and visual navigation. So they use things like photo, slideshows, and buttons that are really visual, but they also use text because some people are more visual and some people are more linear. Usually the logo or website name is in the upper left corner or in the center of the page. And usually they use a limited color palette and limited amount of fonts to keep things unified. Like if we went to this, if we go to this site, you can see that there's just a few colors that they use. They're using kind of the green, that sort of teal green color, black, red, white. Those are like the colors that they're using. If we go to LL Bean, same idea. They've got kind of a black, a dark green, a gray, and a white. So if you're using too many different fonts and colors, it can feel really chaotic, and people are kind of unsure of where they're at. So you want to kind of set a sort of tone by limiting your color palette and fonts. A lot of people, I guess, in the nonprofit world have branding guidelines. You can make these for your business too, to just so that if you have someone who's making you flyers or making you Facebook ads or something, that everything looks similar, so that when they click from the Facebook ad to your website, it feels like they're in the right place. Like I said, in terms of a website, just pick something and start with that. You can change it later. And it's just important for, rather than waiting for conditions to be perfect, it's good to just put stuff out there. And your website is going to be something that you're continuously looking at revising anyway. I probably redesign my website about once a year. I know that that's excessive, but that's the business I'm in. And I'm not afraid to experiment, and you shouldn't be either. Now, e-commerce is this idea, of course, of people buying online. And I want to talk to you a couple, and a lot of people just think, I sell t-shirts and I can sell t-shirts on my website. But some of us who, for example, I have a shared office space, that's like a little bit less straightforward in terms of how to sell that online. So I want to talk to you a little bit about your options in terms of selling online. And the first I'll call a third-party marketplace. So something like an Etsy, a Teespring, an Amazon.com. And the idea with this is that you use an existing service, an existing kind of website marketplace, whether it's, a place like Etsy where people sell handmade goods, or eBay where people are, selling used items. There's an existing group of people that are already going to that site looking for the thing that you're trying to sell. And the pros of using a third-party service is that it's easy to set up, right? Easy to set up. Some decisions are made for you. And the customers that you're looking for are already there. So you don't have to do a lot of work getting them to your website because they're already on eBay looking at, collectible retro furniture. And you sell collectible retro furniture. So it's rather than making everyone move, it's easy to just go where they are. The cons, of course, are that some customer information is stuck in their system. If you use a third-party system, you got to play by their rules. So for example, if you have an Amazon vendor account, there's no way for you to get the email addresses of people who've made purchases from you. There's kind of a little indirect way to do it, but it requires some setup, and we can talk about that if you want to contact me. But and I can send you the link to how to do that. But the thing is, because it's not your party, you can't set the rules. You can't control the customer experience entirely. And of course, the idea is that if you're selling handmade soaps on Etsy, so are a bunch of other people. So your competition is in the same place that you're at. The other thing you can do is use some kind of third-party cart software. So we talked about Shopify, we talked about Squarespace, there's Big Cartel. And basically what you do is you almost have your own website, but it's just like does the e-commerce part of it. It is relatively low cost and low commitment. It's relatively easy to start because it's kind of like the plug and play thing that we were talking about. And because you're sending people to your own kind of online cart, your competition isn't there as well. But because you're using a third-party plug and play thing, it's also not very customizable, and it can become expensive over time, especially if you have a lot of different products. Typically, these services charge you by the amount of products that you have, because, like I said, don't have people who are automatically there looking for the thing. You have to send traffic there yourself. So you have to be ready to take on some marketing if you want to have your own presence. Now, if you're using a database-driven website like WordPress, or if you're using Squarespace already and you want to add e-commerce to your existing website, the pros are that you can control that entire customer experience. And you get to keep your own data because they're on your website. But the cons, of course, are you have to actually set that up, and there are some potential ongoing costs that are not built into a monthly fee, like a plug-and-play service. I will say that there are online-only payment processors, that are making this service a lot less expensive than it used to be. The one I use all the time is Stripe.com, but there's also Braintree Payments, which I believe was recently acquired by PayPal. But these services do not charge a setup fee or a monthly fee. They just charge a percentage per transaction, plus I think it's 2.9% plus 30 cents a transaction. So payment processors even 5 years ago had a monthly fee and a setup fee. So most people didn't want to sell online because they weren't ready to pay those ongoing fees indefinitely without having some kind of, way to try them out. But with a service like this where you only pay when you make money, it makes a lot more sense for people to want to try this stuff. You can also set up a payment form. Now, you may say, well, I'm not quite sure what you're talking about. So let me give the example. Let's say you're a bookstore and you have 200 books. It makes sense for you to set up a cart where people can search by book category and where you can make a custom list for people who really like cookbooks and that kind of thing. But let's say you're a self-published author and you only sell one book. You wrote one book and you're just selling it. Or, that's when it doesn't make sense to have a whole cart. You just need basically a form that takes a payment. And we use these at the office space for people to reserve, for example, our conference rooms where I'm sitting right now. Basically, people pick their day and their time, they fill out the form, they put their payment information in, press submit, and we get payment. A lot of times these are used clearly for nonprofit online donation forms, but you can use them, like I said, if you only sell like one or two kinds of products and you don't have a lot of variables associated. I have a guy I know who sells two types of sauces. So basically he has like an individual jar of sauce costs X amount, or a group of 3 jars costs X amount, or a case of sauce costs X amount. So he doesn't have like infinite number of products to be selling, so a payment form works fine for him. And then of course you can use social media, right? You can join Facebook groups that sell things. You can post, mainly I'm thinking of Facebook, but a lot of, in particular multi-level marketing companies like encourage their people to sell through their existing social channels. And I guess the pros of that is that you connect with your friends, right? And your customers are already on social media because basically everybody's on social media. But the cons are you still need some kind of payment mechanism, and it can get a little confusing. So, like if you post a picture of, let's say you sell, couches, and you post a picture of a couch on Facebook and you say, hey, this couch costs $700. And someone says, I'll take it. So now you have to like message that person and figure out payment and when they're going to come pick it up and all that stuff. So it can get a little confusing or sometimes tedious to use sites in that way because they're not really exactly built for that. But in short, what you want to do is show your customers that you're willing to sell online, whether you're willing to take a payment or not. I have a customer that does kayaking tours, and he's really not into like taking credit cards online. I can't convince him otherwise. So what we did is we made him a booking form, and this form collects all the information that he needs from his customers, like what hotel they're staying at, how many people are in their group, how many people in their group are under 12 years old, which, I guess is important. So they basically, and then they can even like check the box that says that they agree to the waiver, which is linked. And then all that has to happen and so they get an email once someone fills out that form. And what they do is they call that person like the next day and they take the credit card payment over the phone. And he said that this completely changed how much business they do online. And now he's thinking of switching to a whole online reservation system. So even if you're not sure about taking payment, just letting people start the transaction. We have a campground too that we work with that takes, reservation inquiries. Because the thing is, a lot of people are looking online during off business hours, and what they want to do is they want to check it off their list that they have taken care of that thing. They've booked the camping site, or they've booked the kayaking tour, or they order, they placed a request for an order for sauce, whatever. They want to just get it done. And what you can do as a business owner after is set up a mechanism where you call them back and take their payment. But just letting them start that process online, I think is really important. And I think, people will start buying on social media. Facebook is already allowing us to send money within Messenger, and people are using Facebook ads to drive things like app downloads, apps that cost money. So usually with things that are new, they try them with digital products first, and then they move them to physical products. So I think that we'll be able to buy things on social media in the next, 5 years. But really the internet has created some, great and relatively inexpensive options for online selling, even if you just want to try it out for a month or two and see how it goes. So I consider you to just, be open to trying it whether it's you want people to be able to, book a haircut, request a haircut time. I was trying to get a haircut for like 3 weeks and I kept forgetting to call them during business hours. So I really wish they would have had a form because I would have gone in a lot sooner than I did, and they could have gotten their money that much faster. So here's the campground I was talking about. Again, I didn't design this form, but I fixed it when it stopped working. But it's just a basic, form that takes the information that these people need to know. An Etsy store. So, Alicia sells handmade soaps. So, and as we can see, like this is her main page and we can see like some of her products and we have the ability to search for it. If you go to other Etsy stores, they all look very similar to this because they're using kind of the same template. And, if we use a service like a third-party service, we have to kind of use whatever templates, whatever layouts that they allow us to use. And then you can make payment forms. And in the case of this payment form, I added some advertisements in the sidebar because this organization was charging people to sponsor this event. And I wanted the sponsors to have additional, bang for their buck. And so we added their logos, and if you click on the logos, it takes you to their websites. And we're actually using software to track how many views and clicks each one of these ads gets, so that next year when they approach these same sponsors for the same event, they'll be able to show them some information. So if you're open to selling online, you'll start to be able to sell online, and you should consider doing that. Now, in terms of selling more online, so let's say you have a store set up, or you're trying to get more people to your existing eBay store. There are a few ways that you can think about selling more items. And these are not just my opinions, these are backed by research or data. One is to use words people are looking for in your store description and your product descriptions. I'll show you a tool that can help you with that momentarily. Offer free shipping. People will do pretty much anything to get free shipping. They'll buy a lot more stuff than they were planning on it just to get free shipping. Of course, do that if that makes sense to you. And be open to the concept of cross-selling or upselling products. So cross-selling means you're selling a related product. So let's say you sell handmade tables. Maybe a cross-sell might be chairs. So like even if you don't make the chairs, to have some chairs that people can buy to go with the tables, or to have tablecloths, whatever, something that goes with the products you're selling. Upselling means you have products that are at different price points, and you have to help people understand if they put something that is a lower price point, you can also show them that there are products available to them at a slightly higher price point that have maybe more features or maybe more options to choose from that they might like. So most e-commerce software allows you to cross-sell and upsell products. So, and you can just add them automatically and it'll, suggest them to people as they're looking through your online shopping cart. The other thing you could do is if you use Google Analytics, which I'll talk about in a second, it's a free tracking tool. There's this thing called it's a funnel that you can see in Google Analytics. And what this allows you to do is it allows you to see where there's a potential problem in your sales process. So, in the case here, we have the view shopping cart button, and then it requires you to log in, and then you place your order, and then the order is completed, okay? So what we see is that a lot of people, only 7% of people move on from the view shopping cart to the login section. So something that this person might want to do is get rid of their login. Sometimes I don't think people want to log in to have to buy something. They're just buying it one time, or they think they're buying it one time. They don't want to create a whole account on a whole other website to just buy something. So I'd be curious if they got rid of their login, if they would have people that would proceeded further in the process. So it's not like people are going to walk up to you and say, hey, I got to page 2 and then I stopped. So what you want to do is set up something that automatically collects this information so you can make decisions and make your shopping cart work better over time. If you can create urgency, that makes sense. A lot of people will wait to make a purchase. They think they'll get a better deal later on or something like that. But if you create some occasion, I'm not saying you even have to offer discounts, but just a reason for people to make that purchase now. Of course, you don't want to be like Chicken Little and tell people the sky is falling all the time, but creating urgency I think is a good idea. And then what you can do is you can test things. So this concept is called A/B testing. And so what you can do is, and a lot of website software allows you to do this if you want, or you can kind of make it a little less scientific. But there's whole websites, by the way, if you want to geek out on this, dedicated to A/B testing results. So for example, an online retailer will change all their shopping cart buttons from red to green. So they'll just change the button color, and then they'll show half of their users the red button and half of the users the green button. And they'll see, that the red button has 19% more buys or something like that. And in this case here, there's the contact Jason, and then there's the contact Jason. I guess the eyeball Jason got a lot better results. I'm not sure why. He looks like he might kill you. But so basically this idea that you can test parts of your shopping cart over time, small elements, certain text, images, and you can see what does better, and you can do more of what does better. So you basically get more sales from the same amount of traffic, which is always a win-win. But your website, if you send people to a website, it's this, it'll give you the most information about your customers compared to anything else that you're going to do online. I like Google Analytics because it's free and it has a really good amount of data. The 4 main sections when you log in are audience, which answers the question of who comes to my website. Acquisition, how did they get to my website? Behavior, what did they do when they get to my website? And conversions, did they do the thing I wanted them to do when they got to my website? So here is like a basic thing of what you'll see. Now the default view, as you see, because our eyeball went to that upper right corner, the default view is a 1 month, but you can actually see more than 1 month's worth of data. If you just do the drop down, you can actually change, you can look at a year's worth of data or whatever. The thing is, when you put this code on your website, this tracking code, basically the stopwatch starts. So what I encourage people to do, even if you're looking at this and you're like, yeah, I'm not sure if I care about my website data now, put Google Analytics on your website, and then you can look at it a year from now, and you can actually use it to make some decisions. So even if you don't care about it now, you may care about it later. And so if we look at this main area, so if you look to the left here, you see that there's like the audience, and I just clicked on overview to show this, but we see some basic metrics, and I'll just discuss these very briefly. Sessions is how many times someone went in, and users is the different IP addresses. So for example, this computer has an IP address. My cell phone has an IP address. The other computer next to me has an IP address. Now, let's say with one of these computers, I went to the website 2 different times. So it would count that as 1 user, 2 sessions. So it makes sense that there's less users than sessions, because if you have any kind of repeat visitors, they're going to be counted as 2 sessions, but 1 user. And page views is how many different pages they looked at on the website. And if you just divide page views by session, you get the pages per session. The average session duration is how long they stayed on your website total before they clicked away. And then the bounce rate is how many people went to one page of your site and didn't go beyond that. So a lot of people freak out at a high bounce rate. But to me, if someone's looking for my phone number and they got to the contact page that has my phone number on it, that's fine. Like, I want people to get what they need to get out. I'd like them to spend a little longer on the site, but that's a whole other story. But as you see, we can drill down. If we look to the left sidebar, we can drill down more, and we can look at, what kinds of mobile devices are people on when they access the site. And the user's flow thing is that little flow chart that I showed you earlier with the shopping cart. And we can see in detail, if we go under acquisition, we can see how people are getting to the site. And ways that people get to the site can be organic search. So they go to google.com and type in some words. They go to yahoo.com and type in some words. Social media, direct traffic, email. Those are different ways people can get to your site. And then if we go to, that was acquisition. And now if we go to behavior, this is what, we can see what pages people looked at. And In this case, I've set up a goal completion of people filling out my contact form. So what I did is I said, okay, how many goal completions for each one of these pages on my site? So in this case, some people went to the About Nicole and then they filled out the contact form. Or they went to the 166th page of blog posts that I posted and they filled out. I don't know, maybe somebody like got to the results on that page. Anyway, so you can see how people are getting, you can see which posts are basically driving people to fill out my contact form, which is valuable for me to know because I do want people to come to the site, but I also want people who are interested in what I have to sell to come to my website. So to set this up, you go to google.com/analytics and you create a Google account. If you have an existing Google account, you can use that. You fill out the form they give you and you put the tracking code on your website, and you might need someone's help to do that. But if you're using Squarespace or anything like that, there's like a little place that you can put your Google Analytics code. And then you just check 24 hours later to make sure it's actually picking up some data. And that's pretty much it. And then it just sits on your site. It doesn't, you don't have to look at it every day or anything, but you just know what's going on. And personally, there is some limits to it. I will just acknowledge right here. One is that this is aggregate data. So you can't follow one user as they go around your site. So you're just looking at, okay, this many people went to the home page, this many people went to the contact page. I don't know how many people went from the home page to the contact page necessarily. And I can't follow them through. And also the real-time data is limited. So I can't watch someone navigate the website in real time. I will also mention at this point that you can add a little kind of creepy thing to your website, which is called a remarketing pixel. So Google has one and Facebook has one. I'll get into that a little bit later. But basically it's this idea that you can actually show ads to people who've been to your website after they visit your website if you add this little remarketing pixel, which is a good thing and can be a little bit creepy too. So we talked a lot right now about websites and how to set them up and the decisions you make and some ideas. But you might want to know how to get people to your site. And this is where we talk about our last topic in this section, which is SEO, search engine optimization. So you can believe a lot of crap that people tell you. There's a lot of misinformation out there, and people like to make it sound like this is a really difficult thing. But there's only 3 things, I think, that have stood the test of time over the last 10 years, and I think it'll be true the next 10 years. Search engines, which are basically being used by people, right? So you're designing your website for people, not for search engines. But search engines, which are used by people, seem to enjoy 3 things. They like words that people are looking for being written on your site. They like links coming into your website, which shows that other websites like your website, so it's probably legitimate. And they like websites that are frequently updated. So let's go over each one of these briefly. So keywords are the words that people, type into Google, whether it's, ham sandwiches near me or whatever. A simple tool to check the relative popularity of certain terms is Google Trends. There are keyword research tools if you want to do more data research. I will say most of the keyword research tools have like a 1 to 2 week free trial period. So what you can do is just, pick a time when you're going to have time to do this, sign up for a free trial of, I think the main one right now is Keyword Discovery. That's the one I've used before. It's normally expensive, but I think they have a 1 or 2 week trial period, and just do all your keyword research during that trial period. But you can just use Google Trends and you can type in words and it'll show you their relative popularity. So you can type in up to 5 terms and it'll compare them. So if I was a landscape painter and I wanted to know what words I should use on my site, I see that people aren't looking for landscape painters, they're looking for landscape painting. That makes sense. But they're not looking for nature paintings for sale. Okay, good to know. That has 0. And it'll show you the relative popularity over time, or you can just look at it over the past year. And it'll also give you, if you scroll down, some other suggestions of related terms. So it'll give you some ideas maybe you haven't thought of yet. But just because it's a word you use doesn't mean it's a word your customers are using. So I always tell people to type in the words in the keyword tool and actually see how popular it is. You clearly use these words to write content on your website, write blog entries, write on other websites about your website, but don't write like a robot because Google knows. And I can use this example because it's no longer on the internet, but I know you can't. It's like, welcome to Ellsworth, Maine. Regardless of where you come from in Maine, to the Down East Maine vacation region, you will undoubtedly come to Ellsworth, Maine. Ellsworth, Maine serves as a hub for Northeast Harbor, Southwest Harbor. And so basically it's like a robot wrote this website to put as many words on the page as they possibly could that people might be looking for in a search engine. The problem is that A, Google knows when you try to do this stuff and it doesn't like it. And B, people can't read this. Like no one wants to come to the site and hang out here because it's so hard to read. The other thing that search engines like is links coming into your website. So if you look at two equal websites in terms of like what they have to offer, how they're built, all that, and one website has 2 links coming in and one has 200, Google isn't going to think that this one that has 200 links coming in is way better, just because a lot more sites are linking to it. And so this is kind of like social proof, but for your website. I will say as a caveat that not all links are created equal. So certain websites are worth more. So for example, like the New York Times is like, I don't know, an 8, I think, in a Google page rank. Breaking Even, my website, is a 3. Amazon is a 9. Google is a 10. Okay, just to give you an idea that, so a link coming from the New York Times to your website versus a link coming from my website to your website, the New York Times link is worth more. Google will weight it higher. So, just keep that in mind. So if you want to see what websites are linking to you, you have a few options. Personally, like you can look at the referral links section of your Google Analytics. That's my favorite place to look. But my second favorite place to look is actually if you just Google free backlink checker, you can get like a whole list of links coming into your site. And you can see and this kind of happened to me. I looked at how many links I had, and I had 1,500 a few years ago. And I was thinking of switching my domain name, but when I saw that I had 1,500 links coming into my site, I realized that it probably wasn't worth all that hassle to lose all those links. So I'm just using the domain I have. But there's a couple of ways for you to look up what sites are linking to you. And you may ask yourself, well, how do you get more links to your site? And one of them is to ask people. So I'm sure you have wholesalers. I'm sure if you're a chamber member, maybe you get a free link from the chamber. So just, asking for them from people who are supposed to be giving them to you. And by looking them up, you might see that, they forgot to update your listing or something like that. A lot of people leave blog comments. So if you maintain a website and you're like, why are all these people leaving random comments? And a lot of them, it's because they want links coming back into their site. But if you do this and aren't malicious about it, and actually contribute to the conversation, a lot of people, leave pertinent blog comments to build links coming into their site. And you can use social media and actually link to your site with social media. A lot of people use social media and forget to link to their actual website by actually having content that people want to link to. That's another thing to do. So having good articles, having good information. And you can use opportunities in your control, like making a free Google business listing. Anytime that you fill out some kind of social media profile, it lets you put a link in, use that link area. And in the case of, in your email signature, having it linked back to your website is a good thing to do too. And the final thing that search engines like are frequently updated content. So they want you to keep your site up to date, because if Google is looking at 2 equivalent websites and one of them was updated a week ago and one of them was updated 6 months ago, Google's going to assume that the one updated a week ago is more important because the person who is maintaining it cares about it. So basically a blog kills all 3 birds with one stone. It has words people are looking for. It has something that people want to link to, like pertinent information, and it's frequently updated. So a lot of people will add a blog to their website, not because they have a deep love of writing. I mean, they might. But most big companies have blogs on their websites for the search engine benefits. But other things you can do, of course, besides a blog, right? You can have a really robust frequently asked questions section. You can have galleries of photo galleries and product galleries of, pictures of your products with information about them. You know, you can have testimonials on your site, show a map of where you sell things. So you have, you know, options besides having a blog if you don't feel like you want to maintain a blog. There's lots of factors, you know, that are out there, and there are people who test them all the time. So moz.com or moz.com is like a really nice resource, and they are constantly ranking factors that contribute to better search engine performance. My thing that I like that they do is called Whiteboard Friday, because there's a guy with a mustache mainly. There's other people who do them too, but he'll explain like a search engine type topic in a really relatively easy to understand way using a whiteboard. But basically, the reason that we care about this is that, you know, depending on your site, 40 to 90% of your website traffic is search engines. So doing better in search engines helps get more people to your website. That's why we care about it. You know, and I will say too that, you know, mobile friendly websites tend to show up preferentially in Google mobile website searches. There was a thing, they called it Mobilegeddon a couple of years ago. I got a lot of calls from my clients really worrying that their whole website was going to disappear off Google. But really what it was that if Google has an equivalent website that's mobile friendly and one that isn't, and you're on a mobile device, it's going to show you the mobile friendly one. And that makes sense when you think about it that way. And you can usually tell what Google cares about because it shows up in Google Analytics. So something I noticed was a couple of years ago, there was this page load time thing that showed up in Google Analytics. And I was like, okay, so if Google is tracking it, it cares about how long it takes for your website to load. And I should probably work on making mine load a little faster. And different search engines rank factors differently. That's why you can search the same thing in Yahoo, Bing, and Google and get different results, because different search engines rank things slightly differently at different times. So rather than constantly worrying about little tiny things that you can change, if you keep up with the three big things I talked about, you're going to do fine in search engines. And, you know, I mentioned SEO Moz as a great resource for this. There's also Website Grader. By the way, this is by HubSpot, and they're going to try to sell you expensive software. Don't buy the software, but you can put your URL into the Website Grader, and it'll give you, it'll grade your website 0 out of 100, and it'll tell you things that you can do to improve your actual website. So those are the kind of two resources I guess I recommend the most out of this list. Now the next part is going to be about social media, which is, you know, what people are using in terms of their marketing to get people to their website and to just know more about their business or nonprofit. So thanks for watching this section, and I will see you in the social media section.